The Quantum Plague. The Grand Council Chamber of the Stellar Confederation hung suspended in space, its crystalline architecture reflecting the light of 1,000 stars. First Speaker Zaravek stood before the assembled representatives of over 10,000 civilizations, her quantum-processed consciousness struggling to maintain composure as she delivered the news that would shake the foundations of their society. "The corruption spreads," she announced, her form shifting between states of matter as she spoke, a display that would normally demonstrate the mastery their species had achieved over the fundamental forces of reality. Today, it only emphasized their vulnerability. 37 worlds have gone silent in the past solar cycle. Our quantum evolution, the very advancement that has defined our civilization for millennia, has become our weakness. The assembled representatives, each a master of matter and energy in their own right, generated a low-frequency hum of distress that rippled through subspace. The disease, if it could even be called that, targeted the quantum-processed consciousness that every advanced species had evolved to possess. It was a plague that struck at the very foundation of their existence. "Our predictive matrices have failed," continued Zaravek, her form stabilizing into something approximating solidarity. "Every simulation, every quantum calculation, shows the same result. Total civilization collapse within 12 cycles." From the assembled representatives, Science Director Krente emerged, his consciousness projected through a matrix of pure energy. "First Speaker, we have exhausted every avenue of research available to us. The plague adapts faster than our quantum processing can compute new solutions. It's as if..." He paused, his energy matrix flickering with uncertainty, as if it's targeting the very mechanisms we use to fight it. The chamber erupted in waves of charged particles, the equivalent of panic murmuring among quantum-evolved beings. Their civilization had long ago transcended the limitations of biological evolution, transforming themselves into beings of pure energy and quantum consciousness. Every problem they had ever faced had been solved through superior processing power and technological advancement. Until now. "There may be one possibility we haven't considered," came a quiet voice from the far corner of the chamber. All attention turned to research specialist Lux M, one of their youngest members. Her consciousness still occasionally displayed traces of what they considered primitive patterns, random thoughts, intuitive leaps, imperfect processing. "Speak, specialist," commanded Zaravek. "We've been searching for a solution using quantum processing, advanced mathematics, perfect logical sequences." Lux M began, her form shimmering with nervous energy. "But what if the solution lies in the opposite direction? What if we need something the plague can't predict or process?" "Explain," demanded Krente, his energy matrix intensifying with interest. "There's a planet in the spiral arm of Galaxy Section 7, Lux M continued. "The inhabitants are still largely biological. They haven't even achieved basic quantum consciousness. We've been observing them as part of our anthropological studies of primitive species." "Earth," Zaravek stated, her form rippling with recognition. "You can't be suggesting. Their biology is chaos itself." Lux M pressed on. "Their bodies are filled with redundancies, imperfections, random mutations. Their thought processes are erratic, following patterns that defy quantum prediction. They still rely on chemical processes for basic functions. They're everything we evolved beyond. And you believe this primitive state might be the key." Krente's energy matrix pulsed with skepticism. "The plague targets quantum-processed consciousness. It predicts and corrupts our perfect systems," Lux M explained. "But these humans, their imperfect biology, might be something it cannot process. Their random mutations and chaotic immune responses might hold the key to fighting something that defeats our perfect systems." The chamber fell into absolute stillness, a rare state for beings of pure energy and quantum consciousness. The suggestion was almost heretical. To seek help from biological beings, to admit that their imperfections might be valuable. It challenged everything their civilization had built itself upon. First speaker Zaravex's form shifted through multiple states as she processed the implications. The outcome would be unpredictable, she said finally. We would be putting our fate in the hands of beings who still wage wars over resources, who allow emotion to override logic, who embrace chaos rather than perfect order. Yes, Lux M agreed. That's exactly why it might work. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of 10,000 years of progress, balanced against the threat of extinction. Finally, Zaravex spoke again, her form resolving into a clear, crystalline structure. The sign of an irrevocable decision. Prepare a contact team, she commanded. We will approach their scientific community first. But understand this, if we do this, if we reveal ourselves to them, nothing will ever be the same. We will be binding our fate to a species that still thinks in terms of biological evolution rather than quantum processing. Better an uncertain future, Lux M responded, than no future at all. As the Grand Council chamber erupted into heated debate, Zaravex gazed out at the star-filled void. Somewhere out there, on a small blue planet, beings of flesh and blood were going about their lives, unaware that their very imperfection might hold the key to saving the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. The quantum plague continued its relentless spread across the stars, but for the first time since the crisis began, there was something new in the quantum consciousness of the Stellar Confederation's leadership: hope. It was chaotic, uncertain, and thoroughly unpredictable, just like the species they were about to contact. The primitive solution. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her dimly lit laboratory at MIT, staring at results that made no sense. The quantum behavior of the particles she'd been studying violated every known law of physics. She checked her equipment 3 times, but the results remained the same. As she reached for her coffee, the air in front of her began to shimmer. Dr. Sarah Chen, a voice spoke, seemingly from everywhere and nowhere at once. We require your assistance. Sarah dropped her coffee mug, but before it could shatter against the floor, it stopped, suspended in midair. The air solidified into 3 distinct forms, one crystalline, one pure energy, and one that seemed to shift between states of matter. I'm either hallucinating from too much caffeine, Sarah said, reaching out to touch the frozen coffee drops hanging in the air, or this is first contact. The latter, the crystalline form, spoke. I am first speaker Zaravex of the Stellar Confederation. With me are Science Director Krenta and Research Specialist Lux M. Sarah's scientific mind kicked into overdrive, questions tumbling out. Your control over quantum states is remarkable. The energy required to maintain stable matter-energy conversion at room temperature alone would. Dr. Chen, Zaravex interrupted. We face extinction. Your understanding of quantum mechanics, particularly your recent work on quantum uncertainty in biological systems, may be crucial to our survival. Over the next hour, they explained everything. The quantum plague, their civilization's evolution beyond biological forms, and their desperate situation. Sarah listened, occasionally asking questions that surprised the aliens with their insight. Let me get this straight, she said finally, pacing her lab. You evolved beyond biological forms into quantum process consciousness, but now something is corrupting that consciousness. And you think our primitive biological nature might help. Your species still operates on principles we abandoned eons ago, Krentev explained, his energy form pulsing. Your thoughts follow patterns we cannot predict. Your very existence embraces uncertainty in ways we've forgotten. Sarah laughed, a sound that made the aliens' forms flicker in surprise. You know what this reminds me of? Computer viruses. The most sophisticated systems are often the most vulnerable because their patterns can be predicted and exploited. Sometimes, older, simpler systems are immune precisely because they're too basic to be targeted. An interesting analogy. Lux M observed. We've run countless quantum calculations. That's your problem right there, Sarah interrupted, growing excited. You're still trying to solve this with perfect quantum calculations, but what if the solution isn't about finding the perfect answer? What if it's about embracing imperfection? She rushed to her whiteboard, beginning to sketch diagrams. Look, quantum computing is all about superposition, right? Multiple states existing simultaneously. But biological systems, they're messy. They don't just exist in multiple states, they thrive on randomness. Mutations, adaptations, chaos theory in action. You suggest we embrace chaos. Krente's energy form flickered with what might have been horror. I suggest we learn from it, Sarah corrected. Your quantum plague. It's targeting consciousness that operates on predictable quantum principles. But biological consciousness, it's anything but predictable. We need a team. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez at Berkeley, his work on quantum effects in neural networks. Dr. Yuki Tanaka in Tokyo. She's doing groundbreaking research on quantum states in organic systems. You would share this crisis with others? Zara Vex asked. Of course, Sarah replied, already reaching for her phone. That's another thing about humans. We work best when we work together. Our chaos multiplies exponentially, but so does our creativity. The council will not be pleased, Krente observed. Your council can either accept help from primitives, Sarah said, dialing, or watch their perfect civilization collapse. Their choice. As Sarah began assembling her team, explaining the situation to increasingly stunned colleagues around the world, the aliens observed with a mixture of concern and fascination. These humans didn't just accept chaos. They embraced it, channeled it, used it to fuel their creativity and problem-solving. First speaker, Lux M, said privately through their quantum link, I believe we made the right choice. Their approach is terrifying. Krenta suggested. Beautiful, Lux M corrected. Look at how quickly they adapt, how readily they accept new possibilities. We spent centuries trying to eliminate uncertainty from our existence. They've turned it into an art form. In less than 24 hours, Sarah had assembled a team of 12 leading scientists from 9 countries. None of them had slept. All of them were buzzing with ideas, theories, and possibilities that the aliens' quantum processors found almost impossible to follow. Their approaches were unorthodox, their methods chaotic, their enthusiasm infectious. The fight against the quantum plague was about to take a very human turn. Trial by evolution. The Stellar Confederation's emergency research facility orbiting Jupiter hummed with an unfamiliar energy. Where once perfect order had reigned, now chaos flourished. Whiteboards covered in human handwriting lined the crystalline walls. Sticky notes dotted holographic displays, and the air was thick with the scent of coffee, a substance that several alien researchers have become surprisingly fond of. This is madness, Council Observer Trenvos declared, his quantum matrix practically vibrating with disapproval. They're using analog equipment, writing calculations by hand. Their methods are completely unstructured. Dr. Sarah Chen ignored him, focused on the holographic display where Dr. Rodriguez was explaining his latest theory. The team had been working for 3 weeks straight, making progress that simultaneously thrilled and terrified their alien hosts. Look at this pattern, Rodriguez said, manipulating the 3D display of infected quantum consciousness. The plague doesn't just corrupt quantum processing, it uses the system's own perfection against it. It's like a mirror, Dr. Tanaka finished, jumping up from her workstation. It reflects the consciousness back on itself, creating a perfect feedback loop that amplifies until the system collapses. Precisely why we need ordered, methodical research, Trenvos insisted, not these random intuitive leaps. Sarah spun to face him. Those random intuitive leaps have gotten us further in 3 weeks than your quantum calculations did in months. We're seeing patterns you missed precisely because we're not trying to process everything perfectly. Lux M, who had become something of a bridge between the human and alien teams, moved forward. She's right. Our quantum processing looks for perfect solutions, but this plague, it uses that perfection as a weapon. Every perfect solution becomes a perfect vulnerability. Which is why we need to fight fire with fire. Sarah said, pulling up new data, or in this case, chaos with chaos. Dr. Patel, show them what you found. Dr. Arun Patel, a neurologist from Mumbai, projected his results. We've been studying how human consciousness handles quantum states. Our brains don't maintain quantum coherence the way your processors do. We're constantly collapsing quantum states into classical states and back again. It's messy, inefficient, and potentially our salvation. Lux M finished, her form shifting with excitement. The plague can't create a perfect feedback loop in a system that's inherently imperfect. The facility's main chamber erupted into a flurry of activity. Human scientists rushed between workstations, calling out ideas, arguing theories, while their alien counterparts tried to follow their chaotic, but undeniably effective methodology. But not everyone was convinced. A growing faction within the Stellar Confederation saw the humans' involvement as a threat to their very way of life. Emergency council sessions debated the wisdom of allowing primitives access to advanced quantum technology. Some feared that humanity might prove more dangerous than the plague itself. These fears came to a head when the first test of their hybrid solution catastrophically failed. The attempt to introduce controlled chaos into an infected quantum consciousness resulted in an explosion that vaporized an entire testing chamber. This is unconscionable, Trenvos declared to an emergency session of the facility's leadership. Their reckless methods have already caused damage. If they continue, they could destabilize the very fabric of our civilization. And if we don't continue, there won't be a civilization left to save. Sarah countered, dark circles under her eyes betraying her exhaustion. We're close to a breakthrough. The explosion happened because we were still thinking too much like you, trying to control the chaos. We need to embrace it fully. You're suggesting we deliberately introduce more randomness into our quantum matrix? Krenta asked, his energy form fluctuating with concern. The computational power loss alone would be significant. Dr. Rodriguez jumped in, but survivable. Look at human consciousness. We operate at a fraction of your processing power, but we're able to make creative leaps your quantum computers can't predict. Sometimes less is more. As the debate raged, Dr. Tanaka quietly worked at her station, running simulations based on their failed test. Suddenly, she gasped, "Everyone, look at this." The chamber's holographic display filled with her data. The explosion wasn't just a failure. It had created a momentary state that no one had predicted. For a fraction of a second, the infected quantum consciousness had stabilized in a way that shouldn't have been possible. "It's beautiful," Lux M whispered, her form shifting through colors of awe. The chaos didn't just disrupt the plague's feedback loop. It forced the quantum consciousness to evolve, to adapt in ways our perfect systems never could. Evolution through imperfection, Sarah said softly. That's what we've been missing. The plague keeps winning because it can predict every perfect defense. But evolution, real, messy, biological evolution, that's something even a quantum plague can't calculate. The human team worked through the night, fueled by coffee and the growing excitement of discovery. They weren't just fighting the plague anymore. They were redefining the very nature of consciousness evolution. And in their controlled chaos, in their beautiful imperfection, they were showing their alien hosts a path forward that none of their quantum calculations could have predicted. The question was, would the Stellar Confederation be willing to take that leap into uncertainty? Strength in imperfection. Alarms blared throughout the Jupiter facility as another world went dark. The quantum plague had reached the core systems of the Stellar Confederation. On the main display, the number of affected worlds climbed higher, each loss representing billions of quantum-processed minds. "We're out of time," first speaker Zara Vex announced, her crystalline form pulsing with urgency. "The Council demands results, or they will terminate this experiment and implement the Quantum Purge Protocol." "Quantum Purge?" Sarah asked, looking up from her workstation. "A last resort," Lux M explained, her form dimming. "It would sever all quantum connections between worlds, forcing each civilization to revert to a pre-quantum state. Trillions would die in the process. Dr. Rodriguez slammed his hand on his desk. That's not an option. We're close. The last test showed. The last test nearly breached the facility's containment. Trenvos interrupted. These humans push us toward chaos while our civilization crumbles. That's exactly what we need, Dr. Tanaka exclaimed, rushing to the central holographic display. We've been thinking about chaos as something to control, to introduce in measured doses. But look at this. She pulled up data from their failed experiments, overlaying them with patterns from human neural scans. Every time we try to control the chaos, the plague adapts. But when we let the chaos run its natural course, the quantum consciousness begins to show signs of true evolution. Dr. Patel finished, his eyes widening with realization. Not just computational adaptation, but actual evolutionary response. Sarah stood up slowly, an idea forming. What if that's the answer? Not introducing chaos into your quantum systems, but teaching your quantum consciousness how to evolve naturally, like biological systems do. Impossible, Trenvos declared. Our evolution beyond biological constraints is what defines our civilization. Is it? Lux M challenged, moving to examine the human data more closely. We assumed transcending biology meant achieving perfection. But what if true transcendence means keeping the ability to adapt, to evolve, to embrace imperfection? The facility shook as another quantum surge hit, this one closer than ever. The plague was approaching Jupiter. They had hours, at most. We need to test it, Sarah said firmly. Not on an isolated system. It needs to be a full quantum consciousness. Out of the question, Trenvos began. But Lux M moved forward. Use me, she said, her form solidifying with determination. My consciousness still shows traces of what we considered primitive patterns. On your best chance. The chamber erupted in argument. The risks were enormous. A failed test could shatter Lux M's consciousness completely. But they were out of options and out of time. Begin preparations, Zarevex commanded, overriding all objections. Humanity has shown us that strength lies not in perfection, but in the ability to adapt. It's time we remembered how to evolve. The next hours were a blur of activity. The human team worked frantically, preparing to introduce controlled evolutionary algorithms into Lux M's quantum matrix. They weren't trying to fight the plague anymore. They were trying to teach a quantum consciousness how to fight it itself, how to evolve and adapt like a biological system. Neural pattern ready, Dr. Tanaka reported. Quantum matrix aligned. Dr. Rodriguez added. Evolutionary algorithms in place. Dr. Patel confirmed. Sarah looked at Lux M, who had taken position in the center of the testing chamber. Are you sure about this? In all our quest for perfection, Lux M replied, her form beginning to shimmer with energy. We forgot the perfect system is one that can adapt to imperfection. Proceed, Dr. Chen. Sarah initiated the sequence. Lux M's form exploded into pure energy as the plague was introduced into her quantum matrix. But instead of fighting it with perfect quantum calculations, her consciousness began to shift and adapt in ways the Stellar Confederation had thought impossible. The chamber sensors went wild as Lux M's consciousness evolved, not toward greater perfection, but toward greater adaptability. The plague's attempts to create feedback loops met with constantly changing patterns. Every perfect reflection it tried to create shattered against the beautiful chaos of natural evolution. It's working, Sarah whispered, watching the displays in awe. She's not just fighting the plague, she's evolving beyond it. In the testing chamber, Lux M's form had become something entirely new. Neither purely quantum nor purely biological, but a synthesis of both. She had found a third path, one that combined the computational power of quantum consciousness with the adaptability of biological evolution. And in that moment, as the plague's attack shattered against her evolved defenses, the Stellar Confederation glimpsed a future they had never imagined. one where perfection wasn't the goal, but rather the perfect ability to be imperfect, to change, to grow. The question now was, were they ready to embrace that future? A new dawn. The Grand Council chamber of the Stellar Confederation was transformed. Where once crystalline perfection had reigned, now the architecture itself seemed to pulse with life, quantum patterns flowing like rivers through its structure. 3 months had passed since Lux M's evolution, and nothing in their civilization would ever be the same. First speaker Zaravex stood before the assembled representatives, her form no longer purely crystalline but shifting between states in a beautiful dance of order and chaos. "The quantum plague is defeated," she announced, "not through perfect defense, but through perfect adaptation. Humanity has taught us that true advancement lies not in transcending evolution, but in embracing it." Dr. Sarah Chen and her team stood among the alien representatives, the first humans ever to address the Grand Council. The past months had been exhausting, but exhilarating as they helped implement the evolutionary protocols across the Confederation. World after world had embraced the new synthesis, their quantum consciousness learning to adapt and evolve like biological systems. The process wasn't perfect, Sarah reported, a smile playing at her lips. There were setbacks, failures, unexpected mutations. In other words, it was perfectly human. And perfectly beautiful, Lux M added. She had become something of a bridge between the old and new ways, her evolved consciousness demonstrating possibilities neither humanity nor the Confederation had imagined. "We thought we had evolved beyond biology, but instead we had trapped ourselves in amber, perfect but unchanging." The chamber's displays showed the transformation spreading across the galaxy. Quantum civilizations were not reverting to biological forms, but rather achieving a new synthesis, consciousness that could shift and adapt, combining the computational power of quantum processing with the evolutionary potential of biological systems. But the greatest discovery, Dr. Rodriguez spoke up, wasn't the technical solution. It was learning that advancement doesn't mean leaving behind what makes us adaptable. Sometimes, the oldest patterns are the most valuable. Trenvos, who had once opposed their efforts, moved forward. His energy form now showed traces of organic patterns. "We had forgotten what it meant to evolve," he admitted. "In pursuing perfection, we had achieved stagnation. Humanity reminded us that the universe is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced, adapted to, grown with." "Which brings us to the next phase," Zaravex announced. "The Council has voted. We extend an invitation to Earth, not to join the Confederation as it was, but to help us build something new. A civilization that embraces both order and chaos, computation and intuition, perfection and evolution." Sarah looked at her team, seeing the same mix of excitement and uncertainty in their eyes that she felt. They had come to save an alien civilization, and ended up transforming it. Now they were being offered the chance to help shape the future of both species. "There will be challenges," Krente observed, his energy form showing new complexity. "Our cultures are very different. The path forward is uncertain." "Good," Sarah replied. "Uncertainty means room to grow, to adapt, to evolve. Besides, humanity's pretty good at handling uncertainty. It's kind of our specialty." The chamber filled with a harmonic resonance, the quantum equivalent of laughter. It was a sound that would have been impossible in the old Confederation. Too chaotic, too imperfect. Now it felt right. "Then let us begin," Zaravex declared, "not as perfect beings, but as evolving ones. Not as separate species, but as partners in adaptation. The galaxy faces many challenges, and we will need both quantum computation and human chaos to face them." As the formal proceedings continued, Sarah stood with her team, watching the mixture of quantum and organic patterns dance across the chamber's walls. They had come to help an advanced civilization survive a plague, but they had achieved something far more profound. They had shown that true advancement wasn't about achieving perfection. It was about maintaining the ability to change, to grow, to evolve. The quantum plague had threatened to destroy the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Instead, it had forced that civilization to rediscover something it had forgotten. The perfect system isn't one that never changes, but one that can adapt to any change. It was a lesson humanity had learned through millions of years of evolution, written in their very DNA. As the Earth team prepared to return home to begin the work of bridging their worlds, Lux M approached Sarah. "You know," she said, her form shifting between patterns that would have been impossible before her evolution. "We thought we were asking primitives for help. Instead, you showed us what true advancement looks like." Sarah smiled. "That's the funny thing about evolution. Sometimes the best way forward is to remember where you came from." She looked out at the star-filled void, where Earth was just one point of light among many. And sometimes the most primitive thing can be the most advanced. The chamber's quantum patterns pulsed with new life, neither purely ordered nor purely chaotic, but something in between, something that could adapt, evolve, and grow. It was imperfect, uncertain, and absolutely beautiful, just like life itself.